There were several points during this movie where I could hear the audience surrounding me either squirming or gagging or feeling nauseated, but me, nah, I was feeling rather groovy. Evil Dead Burn is directed by Sebastian Vanecek, and it follows a family who has just lost their son as well as a brother, and as they're in the midst of grieving alongside their dead loved one's wife, evil itself decides to take advantage of this family during their low point, and now they must protect themselves from the wrath of these deranged deadites. I am a huge Evil Dead fan. I really love the original 3 movies, as well as the Ash vs. Evil Dead TV show. So as far as this franchise goes, I'm something of a Bruce Campbell elitist. I haven't felt super strongly about the previous 2 Evil Dead cinematic entries. They were really well-made horror movies with lots of cool practical gore and violence, but they just weren't going for that campy horror comedy vibe that I just adored so much from Sam Raimi's original trilogy. So even though they were decent, they just weren't what I was seeking from the franchise. Evil Dead Burn, however, I'd say doesn't exactly scratch my itch for what I personally was looking for in an Evil Dead film, but it actually gave me something totally new. And yeah, right off the bat, this is easily my favorite non-Bruce Campbell Evil Dead movie. I wouldn't call it perfect by any means. I think it takes you a little while to get invested in any of the characters. In fact, a lot of them are extremely unlikable, and that's totally the film's intent. From the get-go, there is just this dry, malevolent tone that wasn't present in any of the other Evil Dead movies. This actually feels like a very cynical, angry movie in a lot of ways, but in ways that I really admire, because also, Evil Dead Burn is sort of the return to the horror comedy aspect, just not the same type of horror comedy as the original Evil Deads. As I said before, this movie is very dry, and I mean that in terms of its humor as well. There's a lot of really strange, awkward, dark humor at play, and a lot of tension-filled sequences, not just in regards to this film's horror, but also in regards to the tension that comes from the interpersonal character drama. The opening scene is extremely gruesome and violent in a way that I haven't quite seen in an Evil Dead movie, where I genuinely found it disturbing and kind of hard to watch. Then immediately after, there's this very jarring tonal shift, and I wasn't quite sure how I was feeling about the movie for about 5 or 10 minutes, until I realized this movie is kind of trying to make you feel uneasy with its tone. Some of the acting choices are questionable here, and there are a couple dumb moments. I think there are several things that were set up throughout the movie that had somewhat disappointing payoffs, but what I really love about Evil Dead Burn is its tone, and its tone is fucking awesome. As I was watching it, it reminded me less of an Evil Dead movie or even a modern horror movie, but it kind of had me on edge in the sort of vein that a new French extremity film might. And of course, it turns out this is directed by a French filmmaker, so that all tracks. While a lot of the gore in this film is fun and even funny at times, there's also some violence that's genuinely hard to watch and just kind of disturbing. I really like that. That's a nice change of pace, and it's not something I was expecting. I didn't have super high expectations going into Evil Dead Burn, but I have to say I was really pleasantly surprised. Despite its flaws, I was on the edge of my seat throughout the movie's runtime. As an Evil Dead fan, I appreciated some of the ways they integrated lore, and eventually I really grew to care about this main girl and her plight. I thought she gave an excellent performance, and she was a really cool protagonist. Regardless of Evil Dead Burn being somewhat rough around the edges, I kind of appreciate that this movie has balls and it's really going for something unique. I will always favor a flawed, interesting piece of filmmaking over something that's just boring, plays everything safe, and is made to not offend anyone. I really love the camera work here. There's a nice mix of still wide shots, as well as up-close, handheld, claustrophobic cinematography that really helped immerse you in these horror scenarios. As expected, the effects here were all really great, except for one CG-related visual effect towards the end of the movie that I won't spoil, but it was sort of a payoff to something, and I found it to be kind of unsatisfying. Nonetheless, I'm surprised to say I actually really loved Evil Dead Burn. I thought it was great. Totally recommend it to horror fans. If you love the previous 2 Evil Dead movies, I'm not sure if you're gonna get what you want from this. You do get a lot of those same Evil Dead tropes and elements that you've grown accustomed to, but I feel like they're just told through a different context here, and tonally, I don't know if this is gonna sit right with everyone. But as for me, I thought this was unique, and I kinda dug it. I'm gonna give Evil Dead Burn an 8 out of 10. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you have a good one.